Hello, everybody, and thank you for being here Tuesday, January 21st. Welcome to Business Tonight. The mission of Business Tonight is to share news and information to empower you to achieve your educational and career goals. Week three, we have two objectives. One objective, assess the role of performance planning and control to measure organizational performance, and assess the effects of various conditions on the decision-making process. The agenda, starting at 8 o'clock now, we have what we call open connections. I call it also Q&A time. And during this time, I'll be talking about the part one of your course project. 8:10, we have our practitioner spotlight. Dr. Stephen Achata, who's a Google employee, will be here. Then around 8:40, we'll look at three textbook figures. And then 9 o'clock, I have a couple of questions for you, and then a 10-question Kahoot. And then around 9:20, we'll just sort of wrap things up and talk about what's going to be happening this week. So for our Q&A time, you can either use the chat window or you can unmute yourself and ask questions or make some comments. Okay, well then hearing none, I'm going to move right into what I've got planned to talk about your course project. And this is extracted from your course. The individual course project presentation is in three parts. Part one is due by this Sunday. The objective of this course project is to provide the opportunity for you to recognize and apply the four principles of management: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling, and how they correlate into everyday practices in a Fortune 500 company. During week one, you supplied me with the name of the company that you plan to research. Now, I put together some PowerPoint guidelines for you, so it's not a report in Word. It's actually three separate PowerPoint presentations that are sort of linked together. And it would be nice if you would follow the 5x5 rule for PowerPoint. No more than 5 words per line and no more than 5 lines per slide. So let me repeat this. So the 5x5 rule for good PowerPoint presentations: no more than 5 words per line and then no more than 5 lines per slide. The use of images, parentheses, charts, graphs, and pictures is encouraged. And to further enhance your course project, if you want to add voice narration, go ahead and do that. And examples, today I uploaded to the files area in the course project folder 2 examples from last session, my Business 115 class, where they had something very similar to this that they had to do. So if you want, you should take a look at 2 of those presentations. They're similar in structure of what you're doing. So you would go to the files area in your course, then click on Course Project, and there are 2 different PowerPoint presentations that have voice narration. The one by Asiana is about the United States Postal Service, and then Gino's presentation is about the military. And if you may think back to when you took your Business 115 course, you may have had a project similar to this, because that's where these 2 presentations came from, Business 115 course. So again, go to your files area, course project, and then you can just download those 2. They do have voice narration, and they follow that 5x5 rule and so on. So that might give you an idea of what I'm looking for in your course project. And one more item, I thought it would be good to go over the grading rubric for part one of your presentation. So you start off with slide number 1 is your title page. It has the title of your Fortune 500 company, course name, Management 303, your name, my name, and the presentation date. So that's slide 1, and that's worth 5 points. Slide 2 would be a history, maybe some highlights of your selected company. So we're not looking for hundreds of words. Again, the 5 by 5 rule, just think of like bulleted items, and pictures are always good to enhance it. Slide 3 would be the company's mission and or vision statement. So mission and vision. If you wanted to include their logo or their slogan as part of this slide, that would be great. Or it could go back in slide 2. Then item 4, you would discuss leadership and the roles and who are the top executives. And you may want to even include an organizational chart if you can have access to one. And then your last slide, and this is going to be true for all 3 of your presentations, your last slide would be your references following American Psychological Guidelines, or APA. So it's not just posting websites, there's an actual format for the use of websites. If you need some help with the APA, just let me know, and I will help you. Also provide resources to you, but also I'll put in the chat window, you may be familiar with a website called OWL, O-W-L. It's by Purdue. That's quite helpful when working with APA. So let me stop there and see if there's any questions for me about part 1, which is due this Sunday. And I see Wendy's comment because her husband was in a class with me last session with Business 115. So Wendy's already had a look at Asiana's presentation about the United States Postal Service. So if no questions about the course project, I'm going to go ahead and move on. So, let me stop there. Brianna, yes, it would be good if every slide had voice narration to go with it, because you're limited really to the number of words you can have per slide. And also you may have images that you would just talk about. So it's pretty easy to do, to add voice narration. There's lots of YouTube videos on how to do it. Even within PowerPoint, you can click on the help button, the little question mark, and it can show you how to add voice narration. And the presentations that are uploaded in the files area, they added voice narration to each one of the slides. And for our first presentation, we're talking a maximum of 6 slides. So hopefully that helps. Do take a look at the 2 presentations. So moving on to our topic. So week 1, we did introduction to managerial functions. Then last week, we had strategic management planning. Tonight, we have Dr. Stephen Achata, who's going to talk about organizational structure. Next week, HR, organizational change and innovation. Week 5, about control, elements of control. Week 6 is groups, teams, and leadership. Week 7 will be control systems and quality management. And we will devote our last meeting together to talk about the course project. Again, your course project is in 3 parts, and part 1 is due this coming Sunday. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Stephen Achata. Go ahead and activate your chat window, because you might want to put questions in there for Stephen, or to unmute yourself. Stephen, it's all yours, and thank you for being here.
Oh, of course, it's my pleasure. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fantastic. Hope the rest of the class can hear me. Thank you so much for inviting me to the class, Dr. Jordan. And what I wanted to do is, as we talk about organizational structure, I wanted to give a little background about myself, and then use some material that's in the deck to talk a little bit about organizational structure, how they're formed, why they're formed, and where they apply, right? So as I was introduced, I'm Dr. Stephen Achata. Academically, I was at DeVry University. I got my telecommunications management degree there. And I went on to UGA for my master's in IT, and then I have a doctorate in business administration at Georgia State. And so the reason for sort of contextualizing my qualifications is just to give you a little bit of context on where I come from. I have sort of a little bit of a technical background, but more importantly is how to identify ways in which we can help businesses develop better by either accelerating revenue, by reducing operational expenses, and all of that by using the talent and skills that we have in the organizations, right? In terms of practitioner experience, I've been at Google for 3 years, three different positions, primarily in the domain of data centers. And I say I enable and empower high performance teams that deploy the machines and the networks that you all use when you think about YouTube and photos and any cloud applications. Prior to that, I was with Verizon for almost 17 years. And there I did similar functions. I managed teams, I managed projects, I managed processes. And so again, both companies have given me insight into organizational structures and more importantly, why it is that we have certain organizational structures and why some other companies favor different organizational structures. So having said that, if we move, do I
I have a couple of questions for you.
Oh, of course, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me how you got in at Google.
Well, it is fairly difficult to get to Google. One of the things that you have to do is really expose yourself. And by that, I mean, your LinkedIn profile, make sure you make those connections such that when a position comes up and they're looking for folks, they tend to use, like most companies do, tend to use a referral-based system. So for example, if I'm connected to Dr. Jordan and someone is connected to him and they're looking for someone who, does some of the things that I do, they may find that connection and then reach out to them. And so that's what happened with me. I was approached by a recruiter who had found me on LinkedIn because of a connection I had. But I also had history with Google in the sense that I had applied prior to this role that I got. And again, that also came from another connection. So suffice to say, it's a connection-based world. But once you're targeted for sourcing, then starts the tremendously difficult process of getting in.
So thank you for that. And just one more question about Google. Are you a virtual employee or do you go to a physical location?
I go to a physical location, and that's an excellent question because it actually fits into when we talk about organizational structures, that's going to play a key part in informing why I go to a physical location versus working virtually.
Yeah, I don't want to dominate the conversation, but Stephen, I stop periodically to see if we have any questions from the students that are with us tonight. So we'll just pause here and see either if the chat window, and I see that Giselle says, hey, go UGA. I see that. But maybe there's some other people that want to share something.
Fantastic. And just, I am very open to any questions, any comments. As long as Dr. Jordan doesn't stop me, I can go on forever. And I also want to openly invite you, if you think of anything else after our session and you want to contact me directly, you can do so through my devry.edu or just via LinkedIn. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
So before we move to the next slide, would you mind putting your DeVry email address in our chat window so people can grab it?
Fantastic.
That way they'll have it.
And okay.
There you go. All right, so we got two of them. We have the devry.edu, and then we have a Gmail one. So here we go, Stephen.
All right. So what I used for this presentation that I'm going to discuss today, I used some material from the Stanford Center for Professional Development. I took a course there a few years ago. That coupled with my experience and some coursework I've done really will help inform what I'm going to talk about today. But the reason I use these slides is because they are really informative and easy to walk through. Okay, so when we talk about organizational structure, one of the most important things, and maybe this is something we gloss over as employees, but one of the most important things is how structure ties to strategy and culture. So those three things go hand in hand. There is the strategy that the company decides to pursue, there's the culture that they want to be, and then there's the structure that they actually go into by design, not by default. It just doesn't happen. You actually design the structure to feed the culture and strategy that you have. It is extremely important not to decouple these three entities. They all go together as one. So in the context of strategy, culture, and structure, these are put into what's called a nature bucket, meaning how do you want your organization to be naturally? And this is part of an entire ecosystem that people go behind closed doors and they say, okay, what's our purpose? What's our identity? What's our long-term vision, right? How do we want to engage with people? How do we want to make money? Oh, in all of that, let's come up with a strategy, culture, and structure. So the first key takeaway is that when you think of strategy, when you think of structure, always try and peel the onion and say, what was their strategy when they came up with this structure? What kind of culture did they want to encourage when they came up with this structure? Because those three things go together. And I'll give you several examples that will help ground us in what this means. But for now, structure, strategy, culture all fit in one mold of nature. Cool? All right, let's go on to the next slide. All right, so how does this all fit in? You come in and you figure out what your strategic goal is, right? The strategic goal can be informed by where you want to play in the landscape, in the economic landscape, in the business landscape. So we have, for example, well, actually, why don't I ask you this? What is Google in the business of? What does Google do? When you think Google, what are some of the things that come to your mind in terms of business?
Data?
Okay, distributing information, data, research. Very interesting. Research. So I heard data, research. I'm trying to see, is there any way to see what's in the previous tab? Oh, I guess I can scroll up. So I see
Shopping?
distribution, information, research, shopping. Okay, fantastic. I think the best way to understand what business Google's in is to read our mission. Okay? Our mission says, to make the world's information universally accessible and useful to all. Right? To make the world's information universally accessible and useful to all. That's probably the best mission statement I have ever read in my entire life, and it's not just because I work for Google. It's because a statement that we can never actually achieve, right? So it keeps us moving toward trying to get the world's information accessible and useful to all. Give you a few examples. The world's information can be organized and indexed, and we can do a search and find it. Good. In the United States, that's easy to do. How about trying to do the same thing in India? Maybe a little bit more difficult. If you go to my hometown in Kenya, probably a little more difficult because of access to the internet. Now, how about you go to someone who has a disability and try to give them information and make it accessible and useful to them? Well, that's a little bit different, right? So how about if you go to someone who doesn't speak English and try and make that information useful and accessible to all? So the fact that there's so many nuances, so many different types of people, so many different accommodations you have to make in order to make that information accessible and useful, I think that's why Google's going to be one of those companies that will still be here in years to come because there's no limit to where we can go to make this information accessible and useful to all. Okay? And so part of doing that is to figure out, if I can make this information useful and accessible to all, how can I monetize this information? And believe it or not, the way Google makes the most money today is through ADS, i.e. ads. So ads is a billion-dollar market that we dominate, right? Because we're able to provide companies with search, able to provide companies with things like YouTube videos where they can put their ads in, able to build platforms that allow people to monetize through ads. And by them monetizing through ads, we monetize as well. Some people may not know this, but this is the world's most, probably the world's most popular operating system, right? The Android. The Android is the world's most popular mobile phone. People say the iPhone is, but iPhone is only in the United States. Android is worldwide. So think about the number of people that we reach through Android, the services that we're able to offer to them, and the way we're able to monetize those services through Android. And then the most recent entry that we have is called cloud. So you may have heard of a company called Amazon. You may have heard of another company called Microsoft. Those two are the world leaders when it comes to cloud. And by cloud, I mean having companies migrate all of their services to a cloud-based solution. So Google does it for you and for me because we have Gmail, we have YouTube, we have all of that. But Google, for the longest time, was not in the business of doing it for other companies. But now, because we're doing it for other companies, or we're trying to penetrate what you call enterprise customers, we're slowly building our cloud to accommodate those enterprise customers. Basically, what it boils down to is very soon you will see DeVry exit Cisco WebEx and start using Hangouts. You'll see DeVry start using G Suite versus using Outlook, right? So offering those types of services to enterprise customers. So I'm going to stop for a second and check if there's any initial questions, because again, this will also inform us as we move on as to what type of strategy and structure Google has.
Stephen, I want to know how people make money. Like YouTube, how does that work, and then how does Google get their money?
I will send a link to you and to the class that sort of shows a video of how you make money, but it's basically I put an ad out, and depending on the number of clicks that click on that ad, because of the number of clicks that click on that ad, I give Google some money, and then Google also allows the company to grow because obviously you monetize through that ad. So there's something called click-through. There's some specific terms, and there's some specific amount of money that Google gets from those click-throughs.
Yeah, I've heard of pay-per-click. Is that the same thing?
I think I don't want to misinform you. There's 2 or 3 different types of clicks. There's the pay-per-click. So there's, hey, I clicked it, cool. I give Google some money, right? I clicked on it and I followed through to the website. I give Google some money. I clicked, followed through the website, and made a purchase. I give Google some money. So that's where we make a lot of our money. And think about it too. Before, the ads were appearing on your search, right? But now with YouTube, which is part of Google, I mean, think about all those videos that come up and say, we'll display ad for 5 seconds or whatever, right? All that is ching-ching for us. And it genuinely is a lot of money that we make through ads. And to support those ads, we need to have the data centers because that's where the machines, the network runs in order to allow those customers, we call them customers, like YouTube is our customer, Gmail is our customer, to allow those customers to service external customers. All right.
Yeah, I don't want to be the only one asking questions, so because we have about 7 people on the call, so we'll see if Giselle or Ashley or Rachel or somebody has a question for you or a comment.
Absolutely. Just, again, as you think through, no question is a bad question. So yeah, please feel free to ask. Okay, so let's talk about thinking about that maybe Google set its sights at some point in time to the strategic goal of being in ads, right? And monetizing ads. Uh, if you recall, or in case you don't know this, Google was founded by two PhD students in Stanford, Larry and Sergey. Those two students were like, how can the internet's here, how can we index information and just give people an easier way to get to sites that they want? And that's how Google started 21 years ago, right? Throughout the years, it's transformed a lot. But because it was founded by college students, and because they understood what the college experience was, and the power of collaboration, and the power of working in small groups, when the search was monetized through ads, they created a structure and a culture that aligned its values like a university system. So what does that mean? If you go to offices in Mountain View or in Sunnyvale, you truly see a campus environment. You see all these buildings, you see all these bikes, you see all these cafeterias, you see all these lounges, you see all these little bookstores, things that keep everyone in a college type environment. When you think about our structure, it's very collaborative, very few office. Actually, let me think. I don't think I've seen any office. No offices. It's an open environment. All you have on the boundary of the walls are what are called Google video conferences. So we have little rooms. Some may be as small as one-person rooms. Some may be as big as 100-person rooms. And the idea being that when you engage with someone and you want to have a meeting and collaborate with them, you go into this Google video conference rooms. And you'll find a big screen, you'll find a speaker in the center, you'll find a very interesting way of tying what's in your calendar to a system in the room such that when you push a button, it pulls up everyone who's invited to the call and displays them on the screen. And you basically have a WebEx type interaction with every single person who you've invited to the meeting. And that encourages a very collaborative structure where you can have, I'll give you an example. Today I spoke with one of my VPs over Google Conference, and all I did was invite him to a meeting and say I just wanted to chat with him. No agenda, just wanted to chat with him and get to know him. So that type of collaborative structure. The culture then accompanies that structure because the expectation is that you're in a culture where you can talk. You don't have to feel a power differential between you and the person to whom you report. You don't have to feel, top-down push to get things done. You can actually raise things up and collaborate with people, your peers and people to whom you report to get things done. So again, the strategic goal was to monetize ads. The way Google thought to do it was, hey, these are two PhD students. We want to maintain a campus type environment where everyone has fun. And to do that, we need to put a structure that allows that to happen. And that's the collaborative structure we have at Google. Okay. I don't see anything yet. Okay. So now let me compare, just as a matter of comparison. Google, 21 years old. I worked at Verizon for 17 years. Before that, I worked for a startup company. But thinking about Verizon, a phone company, a telco company, literally hundreds of years old, tons of mergers and acquisitions, very mature company, and a company that prides itself in operational excellence, which means the bottom line, right? If you have a company whose strategy is driven by the bottom line, then probably your structure will not be collaborative. It might be very functional, very hierarchical, where you have a very strict reporting structure. You report to a manager, manager reports to a senior manager reports to director, director reports to VP, VP reports to senior VP, and things get passed down. The type of structure, interestingly, was one where we never had uh, collaboration in the sense of collaborating rooms like we have at Google. It was more so phone calls, presentations, trying to prove that this is a project that you have to do to save the company money versus it's a project that I want to do because I like it. And oh, by the way, it might help the company, right? So a totally different structure. And one of the thoughts behind structure and life cycle is that looking at the chart from left to right, when you have a very immature company like a startup, very simple structure. The HR person is the same as the legal person, the accountant, probably does some janitorial duties. The other person is cooking, cleaning, while also coding, right? Very simple structure. You get together, you make decisions, and you move on. As you grow in maturity, hierarchy becomes a little bit important because, I mean, you have to have some people who manage others, right? I'll tell you an interesting story. I don't think this is well known, but it's public information. At some point in time, very early on, Google decided that managers were not needed. So for a short amount of time, they experimented on what it would be like if there were no managers at all. So I want you to think about you go to work and you don't have any managers. Everyone just sort of self-manages their work. They tried it, and how do you think that worked out?
I would think there'd be a little bit of confusion, and there may be some jealousy.
Yeah, I see the chat. Everyone's saying not well, look well, not well. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, and there's other Silicon Valley-based companies that tried the same thing. They said, hey, everyone's smart, everyone's an engineer, designer, coder. You kind of know what you need to do. She knows what she needs to do. He knows what he needs to do. Who needs managers? And everything failed, right? No structure, no deadlines, no stitching together, none of that. And so at some point, with the maturity of companies, you have to have some sort of hierarchy, right? You have to have a decision maker. You have to have performance-based work. And so as a company matures a little bit more, the structure becomes one where there's a little bit of hierarchy. Then as a company becomes even more mature, there becomes a need for a lot of collaboration across functions and across business units. So you have to have a strong matrix organization. And basically what a matrix organization means is that you may have a project, and in that project team, you have people from different business units that do not all report to the same person. And so you have to come with your skills of being able to collaborate, to talk well, to communicate well, to get things done. And this is where the term comes, leadership without authority, because no one reports to you, but you have to figure out how to get stuff done. And that's true program management, and that's driven by strong matrix. And it's also very good when it comes to program management, product management, when you have people from different teams or different business units coming together towards a common objective. And then as the company matures more, it goes to functional hierarchy. Do as you're told, right? Think about, probably government institutions, civil service, where it's, because process ABC says that. Why should I do this? Well, because process GYA says that. Maybe there's regulations, there's compliance. There could be a lot of things that during the maturity cycle of a company will make the company become more functional rather than simplified. Let's see, baseball all-star team.
What I was thinking when you mentioned about how you have these people from different business units in baseball, they have something called all-star teams, they'll make up these teams from players from other teams, and now there's something like that. So
Exactly. And I mean, think about the two, probably the two things that come knee jerk to my mind is projects and products, right? So you want to design the product, right? So you bring an engineer, you bring a marketing person, you bring a researcher, you bring a UX researcher, you bring, a finance person, you bring all these different people because if you do not, then what's going to happen? I'll give you an example. So a lot of Google's servers are, and by servers I mean computers that are in the data center, are proprietary, right? We don't go out and buy them. We design and build them. So think about someone saying, I want the fastest machine with the most capacity so I can load the most pictures, right? If that person designed and built that machine by themselves without anyone else looking at it, they might try to lift it off the floor and it will be too heavy to lift, right? So we need someone who does ergo, safety, someone who understands, hey, this thing is a little bit heavy, right? And we're going to have to put it in these racks which weigh this amount. So we have an engineer, mechanical engineer. Well, how much power will we need? So we need someone who knows power, right? How much cooling will we need? So we need someone who knows cooling. And oh, by the way, if it needs to be repaired, who's going to repair it if this thing weighs a ton? So we need, operators to kind of work on the machine and see if they can lift it and repair it. So that's what a matrix organization, it really is an all-star team of people that come from different functions, but all of them going towards a common objective, which is to design this product. So hopefully that makes sense in the context of a structure.
absolutely, thank you.
Okay. All right. Then the next slide offers a different perspective, which is maturity of a company is important, but an argument could be made that you can also structure your company depending on the strategic value proposition you have. And let me explain a little bit. So if you look at the bottom row strategic value proposition, you see 4 different strategic value propositions. One is disruptive innovation, the other is product leadership, the third one is customer intimacy, and the fourth one is operational excellence. So there's a lot of academic research and study that goes on to say if the company that you run can only be really good in one of these 4 things. A company cannot be good in all 4 things. You have to strategically choose which one you are really good in or which one you really want to pursue. So what do each of these mean? Disruptive innovation is like it sounds. This is the company that just wants to disrupt the industry, wants to create products real quick, put them out in the market. Some of them may work, some of them may not work. If they work, they disrupt the product domain and give someone some sort of value, right? The second one is about product leadership. You've created this product which is really superior. You spent a lot of time in creating this product that's superior, and because of that, you're a leader in this product. And I think this could be something like, you could say like Apple is probably thrives in product leadership. Disruptive innovation could be ABC startups that come up all the time. And maybe at one point in time, Apple was a disruptive innovator, but now they probably make products that are really, really good, that people really love and will spend a lot of money on them. Right? The third one is customer intimacy. Now, customer intimacy is where what's important to you is the high-touch customer intimacy that you have. An example of this could be something like Nordstrom's, right? When you go to Nordstrom's, someone brings you in, someone may even ask you if you want some water to drink, someone's going to get you the shoe, will have you sit down and actually put the shoe on your foot, right? And you actually are going to pay for that customer intimacy because they have decided that, or you, the customer, have decided it's worth paying the overhead cost just to have a really good intimate relationship with the person who is serving you. And the last one is operational excellence. Operational excellence is all about the bottom line. Bottom line. I'm gonna charge you what I can charge you to get my profit, but nothing more. So if you compare as an example, and I'm saying this just to put it in context, Nordstrom's could be customer intimacy where the shoe that you buy is $100. Uh, uh, Walmart could be the operational excellence where the shoe that you pay for is $20, but you're not expecting anyone to come put it for you or expecting any water. And so there's nothing wrong with any of these four teams, right? It is up to you to choose which one you want to pursue. If it's operational excellence, you're guaranteeing the customer that they're going to have low prices. But because of that, you may have a structure that's very hierarchical. You may have a structure where rules are followed, where nothing deviates from the norm, because any deviation from the norm is going to result in deviation in pricing, and deviation in pricing is not good for the customer, and it will not be the operational excellence strategy that you're pursuing. That's why Walmart can say always low prices, because they have a strict hierarchical structure that allows them to be like that. Customer intimacy requires a very strong matrix. It requires people working in concert, all different people, from customer service to the person on the floor, to the person who's taking your order, to the salesperson. Everyone works in concert with one thing in mind. How can we please the customer? If the customer says, hey, I don't like these shoes, well, even though they've worn them, you know what, we'll take the shoe. It's okay. You don't have to prove to us that you haven't worn it, right? And to do that, you have to have a very strong matrix organization. Product leadership is interesting. It says weak matrix. And I think the reason why it says weak matrix is because you have already established such good cross-functional teams that the product is mature, that it doesn't need a lot of strong collaboration anymore because the product is already really mature. So it's just a matter of ensuring that you dot the I's, you cross the T's before you release the product out, rather than trying to bring all people all the time together to collaborate. And then with disruptive innovation, it's just like it says. Dr. Jordan's in the middle of the call, I tap him and say, hey, we need to do a prototype by next week, but we don't have the equipment. Okay, let's go to Home Depot, buy something, and try and put something together. What do you think? Okay, let's do it, right? And the teams just really ad hoc come together to get that disruptive innovation done, because they need to release it quickly before anyone else can, because if they slow down, then someone else will release that product and they'll be behind. So sort of going back a little bit and summarizing, so we started with, structure, culture, and strategy are all tied in, right? Do not decouple the three. Structure, culture, and strategy are all tied. The other thing that informs structure is the maturity. One of the arguments is the maturity of the organization. The more mature an organization is, probably the more hierarchical they are. I gave the example of Verizon versus Google. The interesting thing is, if we go back one slide, please, Dr. Jordan. The interesting thing is when I left when I left Verizon, they were actually on the downstream. They were going from being functionally hierarchical and trying to simplify their structure. We literally broke down walls, removed people from their offices, and made it a more collaborative space. So I think that at some point, even with the structure over the life cycle, it probably starts the whole life cycle again. You go from functional hierarchy, you say things are too strict, you loosen up a little bit, and then you quickly go up the maturity life cycle. So that's one argument. The second argument is choose the strategy you want, which was the next slide, and based on that strategy, if you believe in the strategic value proposition, that will then inform the structure that you want to implement for your company. So I know I've talked a lot. I'm really sorry. I even went over time.
No, you're doing good. Let's see if there's any, Dr. Achada, let's see if there's any questions in the or comments in the comment window, or if people want to unmute themselves and share something. I've learned to be patient when I ask these questions.
No worries. And like I said, you can chat, you can ask. If you think of anything and you're too shy, you can ask later. But I do encourage the whole time you're talking about working at Google. I can only imagine you walking into the building from the movie. uh, okay. I can spend like a couple of minutes. So is it, well, okay.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Is it best to try a strategy and then adjust if it's not working? That's a really good question, Stacy. I have two conflicting thoughts on it, right? One is strategy. Once you decide, you need to spend a lot of time nailing down what your strategy is. Because if you go wrong, that could really mess you up, right? Financially. Imagine all the people that you're leading towards a strategy and then it fails and you adjust it. I'll give you an example. So with Verizon, um, at some point, Verizon Telco, which is the telephone company, they were hit by the fact that people were not buying landlines anymore. Right? That was their bread and butter, landlines. Everyone needed a landline, but people stopped buying that. Right? So what strategy did they come up with? Let's do DSL, access to the internet. Cool, made a lot of money. Then people stopped buying DSL anymore because now they had broadband from other competitors, and then they had wireless, right, or cellular. So then we started spending all our money on cellular service, right? LTE, 4G, all of that good stuff. But guess what? To monetize, we had, data caps and, 300 text messages and that's it. And then like T-Mobile came and said unlimited. So suddenly you have to then reinvent yourself. And then now everyone expects unlimited service anywhere, any place. So what does Verizon do? Then they have now to come up with a strategy on how to monetize in a place where technology has driven people to expect things for free. So what I'm saying is that if you get into a strategy knowing that at some point in time you'll have to shift, that's good. That's by design. You know that you have 5 years to make all this money, but in the fifth year, you'll have to have something new. That's fantastic. If you go into a strategy saying, well, let's give it a try and spend, 10, $15 billion and see if it works, that's not cool. Unless, and I'm talking on both sides of my mouth here, right? Unless you're a company like, which by design does that. So Google has an arm of Google called Google X, which is all about experiments. So they have a design by which they say, let's try things out. What if we could offer Wi-Fi using balloons? Okay, Project Loon. What if we could do autonomous vehicles? Okay, Waymo, right? So you put out money, a certain amount of funds into experiments, knowing that at some point, strategically, that could give you an advantage. All that to say, Stacy, if your plan is to try this strategy and then change it if it doesn't work, and you do so by design with timeline, with resources, with funding, then that's fine. If you have not thought through this strategy and you just want to give it a try, then you probably would be better served going back to the drawing board and really farming up the strategy before you push it out. I hope that answers your question. Giselle said, whole time you're talking about working at Google, right? So I'll tell you, when I started at Google, I actually went to the Bay Area. The role was in Sunnyvale, which is in Silicon Valley, and so I took up the role there. And then a year later, I moved back to Atlanta. So I can tell you everything you see in the movies is absolutely true, like everything. plus some, from the buses that shuttle you to the offices, to the free breakfast, lunch, dinner, which we continue to enjoy, to the movies, to the sleep pods, to the bikes, to the um, the gyms, the cafeterias. It is everything that's in the movie. Yeah, coffee bars everywhere. Yes, the answer is yes.
Hmm.
You do really have a good time being a Googler. And yes, Giselle, let's see, I'll say yes in caps, just like you said,
Hmm.
just like you asked. Okay. Oh, what else about strategy, structure, or about Google Verizon? All right. I'll leave you with one thing that kind of struck me. So when a few months before I left Verizon, actually about 6 months before I left Verizon, I was one of the first group of people who started using G Suite. So we were told, hey, starting next month, you'll no longer be using Outlook. You'll start using G Suite. And I said to myself, oh my goodness, what is this G Suite, right? The only familiarity I had with Google was Gmail. So I want you to think about coming from Outlook and having a little double click this application that opens up Outlook to actually going to a browser, typing gmail.com, and then putting schat at verizon.com and password. So the first significant change was that you actually used a browser and not an app. So that had its own, nuances because I'd always closed the browser by mistake. And I'd always feel that, someone's watching me because I'm browsing, right? It's kind of weird. The second thing that happened was just the setup of Gmail was not conducive to working in a company, right? Outlook has been built for enterprise, but Gmail was not, at least for us, we didn't feel like it was. And so I'll give you an example. In Outlook, when you schedule a call like the one we have, you can go to, conference number, put a conference number there, invite people to the conference bridge and save it, and it's fantastic. Even when I'm driving, I can just click on that phone number and it auto dials. With Gmail, what would happen is I would look for a place to put the 1-800 number and I wouldn't find it. So I'd put it in this section called location. So I'd put the conference number there. And invariably, when I clicked on the number to initiate a call, a conference bridge, it would open up Maps because Gmail was not built with conference calling in mind. It was built with location to go where you want to go. So these are some of the things that then Gmail or Google had to learn about serving enterprise customers. When I joined Google, and now I started working within the G Suite. And when I say G Suite, I mean Gmail, Docs, Sheets, Slides. That's when I understood where Google was coming from. There are no tools out there that are as collaborative as the G Suite. I can start a document, Dr. Jordan can continue to update it as I'm looking, right? Just the power of collaboration. And the Google Hangouts, that's the simplified structure that Google has decided to use. And a lot of companies are starting to do the same, again, driven by the organizational structure. All right.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chada. Thank you very much for sharing. And I do want to reiterate, when Stephen was talking in the beginning, I asked him how to get with Google, and he mentioned about his associations with other people, but he also talked about LinkedIn. So if you don't have a professional resume and business card kind of set up, and if you're not on LinkedIn, right, Stephen?
Yep.
they need to get LinkedIn. Is that right? They linked up, I guess. So,
Yeah, if you want to get linked up, you need to get LinkedIn. This is,
okay.
I mean, hands down, LinkedIn dominates the market as far as sourcing and recruiting. When they're looking for people before they go to any Indeed or any of that, they go to LinkedIn. And more importantly, they look at who the decision on whether to move forward is based a lot on your profile on LinkedIn. So if you just create a LinkedIn page but really don't put effort into making it be the best that it can be, you may not get that call. So get a LinkedIn account if you don't have it. Make sure it exposes the best of who you are and what value you can provide to a company. And that's at least the first step to get things done.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. And that's what Stacy says. She has an old one. I guess she's talking about LinkedIn. And then Stacy asks again, is there a class on how to set that up? Um, Stacy, I can tell you about with contacting career services at DeVry can certainly help you with that. They have seminars and workshops on doing those kinds of things. But I'm sure if you go into Google, you could probably type in something like professional LinkedIn account or how to do it or what should be on there. Right, Stephen? And I'm sure there's resources out there for us to do that.
Absolutely. And Stacy, you're right. You know, having an old one is even worse than not having one, right? So not having one means you don't have presence on the internet. Having an old one, and I say old one, I'm assuming like really old one, right? That doesn't maximize who you are, then people look at it and gloss over it and say, okay, this person is not right for me. Make it a habit to make sure. 5 years, okay, 5 years is good. I thought you were like saying 15 years ago or something. Just as much as you can, I don't need to tell you this that, people are looking all the time and it's better for them to find you online today, right? Because they may not come back 2 months from now when it's updated, right? So as much as you can update it or make it as current as possible, displaying what you can do for the companies that are seeking you out. Rachel, that's amazing. What specifically is amazing, Rachel? Just want to make sure.
I think she's talking about you, Stephen.
Okay, maybe she's talking about Google. Yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah, Google is amazing, and
Yes.
I'm very Rachel, you're funny. Thank you, and I'm totally honored, privileged to work there. But a lot of people work there, so it's not an impossible company to work for. And once you're in, I mean, it's just crazy nice place to work. So if any of you are really serious about it, I encourage you to go to google.com. Okay, go to that site, browse through some of the openings, an opening that matches your skill set. And if you're like really, 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 really serious, contact me and let's see what we can do.
Well, thank you, Stephen, for sharing. Great questions, everybody. Let's see if anything else is there. If not, we'll move on to our list for tonight.
All
Stephen,
right.
you're welcome to hang around with us. We end up playing Kahoot, but if you want to sign off, I understand that as well. I really appreciate you being here. I learned some new things. I made some notes for myself that I can share with other people as well. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, and looking forward to hearing from any of you. And Dr. Jordan, thank you again for inviting
Yeah.
me to
Thank
join
you,
your
Stephen.
class. Eh?
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah. All right, so everybody, we got another connection. You now say that you know someone that works at Google and that you talk to him and you've got his email and so on. So I want to go ahead and move on. We have 3 textbook figures to look at. So the first one comes from chapter 7, and I have a exercise we're going to do in a minute that actually reinforces these 4 stages. So when you make rational And maybe you can think of a synonym as maybe logical or a decision that makes sense. So rational decision making, the 4 stages, identify a problem or opportunity, think of alternates or think of the different selections. Then you would evaluate those options or alternatives, and then you select the best one. And we do this with buying tires for an automobile or a microwave or selecting a school or automobile, computer, and so on. Sometimes we do this unconsciously, but most often for big ticket items, we do it consciously. So think about the 4 steps. So here's our exercise. You probably have seen these career people before. Like here's the actual what they actually look like. So here's an engineer. They're about, I don't know, 5 inches tall, made of wood, painted, so on. So here's what I want you to do. In column A, I list some things that are important to people when they're looking at a career position. So I made these up. Monthly salary is important. Flexibility of the work schedule. Business skills development, meaning the company will invest in you. Vacation days per year. Benefits, like maybe education benefits, medical benefits, 401k matching benefits. And then the type of environment. We just heard from Stephen, who really loves the Google environment. So here we have 6 sort of things that are important to us. And then going horizontally across, I have 5 jobs. Job A, B, C, D, and E. And I just put in some data points for each one of the job positions, A, B, C, D, and E. And what I'd like you to do is pick out a career person and then pick out what job you would select. So we have 5 different job positions. Which one would you select? You can either unmute yourself or put it in the chat window. So Wendy says job C, job A. Let's hear from a few more people. So we got C and A. Job D. So I've got C, A, and D. And C again. So we'll just stop there. Thank you. So we're looking at the job numbers and not the column headings, but the job numbers. Interesting that you chose C, A, and D. Nobody selected job B, even though job B had the highest monthly salary. And oftentimes we talk about what motivates us in the workplace is money. But really, when you start comparing positions, there may be some other things that are more important than the actual money. And then if you look at job A, $4,000, moderate computer development, 14 annual days, but then the benefits of medical, dental, retirement, employment is great, and so on. So we do this all the time. In business, we call this a preferential matrix or decision matrix, and that's exactly what you just did. You looked at different criteria or characteristics that you look for, you listed what they are for each position, and then you made this rational decision as to which job that you selected. So thank you for that. Our next figure comes from chapter 7. It's figure 2. It just talks about Google's, and it's interesting that Stephen Achata from Google, we should have asked him this, the 8 rules for being a better manager. And we just run down the list. Be a good coach, empower or empowerment, don't micromanage, we don't like that. 3, express interest in other people and their well-being. Don't be a sissy. Be productive and results-oriented. 5, be a good communicator and listen to your teammates. 6, help your employees with career development. 7, have a clear vision and strategy for the team. And Stephen talked quite a bit about strategy, culture, and structure. And then the last one had key technical skills so you can help advise the team. And we looked at Stephen's sort of abbreviated biography. He has those technical skills. And I don't know if you caught this, but he is also a DeVry graduate. And look where he is today. So this is figure 7.2 of table 7.2. So it's chapter 7, the second item. And then the last one, and Stephen actually talked about this as well, about how you have people in sort of this matrix organization. In this case, in this figure out of chapter 8, talks about people being in different geographic locations, but working together on one project. And so it just has the different countries listed here and people that come from different parts of the world and different talents, just like I mentioned in the chat window about the all-star baseball team. We bring the best together to work on something. That was a quick run-through of 3 figures. Now, a couple of questions for you. What is groupthink? How can groupthink be dangerous? And as a manager, what can you do to avoid falling victim to groupthink? So again, you can use the chat area or unmute yourself to share with us about groupthink. If we don't know what groupthink is, we could actually use Stephen's tool. We could Google groupthink. Yeah, so I see a couple of things about there. Making decisions as a group, but it's a little bit more than just making decisions. It's how people may sort of get together and be persuaded to think in a certain way. Yeah, and Stacy says it's dangerous because it limits people to having a voice. It's excellent wording here, Stacy. Yeah, it's controlled by the majority who can be bullies. So, I would research groupthink and look at your book. You can search your book on groupthink as well, but it's a term that I believe that you should be familiar with. And then Wendy put in there about standing your ground or being firm in your particular position. All right, so it's time for Kahoot. We have about 12 minutes left. I created 10 questions for us. So you need to go ahead and get your phone out. I've got my iPhone 4S 2011 version. So go ahead and get your smartphone out. Uh-oh. Wendy said her phone died. All right. So let me go ahead and switch screens here, and let's get Kahoot going. So the way you join is kahoot.it or the app, and you'll need the PIN 6450051. 6450051. So we got a couple of people that have logged in. I know, Wendy, your cell phone died, but maybe you can just stay with us. So we got 2 players so far. 3. Let's see if we can get up to 5 people, make it a little competitive. So kahoot.it on your phone, and then you'll need the PIN number. We got Ashley, so we'll try and get 1 more. So we have 5. And when we play Kahoot, the sooner you do a selection on your phone, the more points you earn. And it's highly competitive with the points. So Brianna is there. She's in there. So thank you, Brianna. We're going to go ahead and get started. So you look at the question on the screen, then you make your selection with one of the four colors that shows up on your phone. So here we go. A blank is a choice made from among available alternatives. So you just pick one of the colors on your phone. Right. It is a decision. A decision is a choice made among available alternatives. Here's our point distribution. Question 2. Symbols, stories, and rituals are ways in which blank are most often transmitted to employees. And it is culture is the correct response. And Stephen talked about that strategy, culture, and structure. Here's our point distribution. Question 3. Ford Motor Company has separate divisions for cars, trucks, and farm products. Thus, Ford uses blank in its organization. Again, we're making the selections on our phone. Yeah, so it is actually, they do it by customers. So they got customers for cars, trucks, and farm products. Question 4 has to do with decision making. And it's the gold one. Groups make better decisions than most individuals acting alone. Don't get this confused with groupthink, where it has like the majority, but usually where you're working in groups, just like Stephen sort of mentioned in the example, if you're tasked with developing a computer and you're in isolation, you may not think about the weight of it, how it's going to be fixed, who's going to transport it, and so on. Question 5. Bianca is a CEO. And the correct answer is a span of control. That means how many people can you manage effectively. So she has a very narrow span of control. It's brainstorming is a technique used to help groups generate multiple ideas for solving problems. Yes, they are a little tricky this week. Yes, they are. Question 7. This is a true false. Division of labor. That is actually false. Who says it has to be 4 employees? You could actually have 2 employees and have division of labor. So the 2 people that you have, the 2 employees, they do separate things. That's division of labor. Question 8. Yeah, delegation, yes. If you're a sole proprietorship, you may have difficulty delegating to other people. But we can't do everything, so we try and delegate. So, yep. Question 9. And Giselle got 3 correct answers in a row. Question 9. It is work specialization is also known as a division of labor. 4 in a row for Giselle. Last question. It's chain of command is another way of describing, really the chain of command sort of describes or details the reporting relationships in an organization. So let's check out where we are. So there's our breakdown for week 3, and the questions I made up were a little bit different from last week. So I hope you enjoyed playing Kahoot. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this. Yes, congratulations, Giselle. Thank you, Giselle. So we're back to where we started. So we have just a few minutes left, and I appreciate people staying with me. So I want to move on to our last slide. So things to do this week. Every day I make up my own sort of things to do list. So review the announcements, review the introduction and lesson for this week, be engaged in our discussion activities, and tomorrow you'll see in your grade book where I put in there in the comments section for week 3 discussion grade that you were here with us tonight. What does that mean to you? It means that you just have to do your first post by Wednesday, and then you do your reflection by Sunday, the reflection being the audio or video. So what do you get? You get 10 points for participating in the live session tonight with me. Chapter readings, 2 chapters. Complete your BookSmart activity. They're due every Sunday, so try to make sure you wrap that up. And then your course project, part 1 is due by this Sunday. Do look in the files area and look at those 2 examples. And then complete, this is the last week for our pulse survey. A maximum, minimum, 1 minute. So if you look at when you log into the discussion, at the very top, I've got the grading rubric, and I believe it says a minimum 1 minute audio or video reflection as to what you learned this week. So, did that, hopefully, Giselle, that answered your question? The minimum time? Yeah, okay, yeah. So in 1 minute, it sounds, it goes very quick. Some people talk 2 and 3 minutes about what they learned this week. So we're going to stop here. I'm going to stop the recording.